Happy Thursday, everybody. Welcome back to The Last Symptom. I'm Brian Barnett, the creator and host of The Last Symptom. Happy to have you with me for this episode of the show. Topics for this episode: life lesson learned from fishing that I wanted to share with you. This is an observation that I've made that I thought could be beneficial to many areas of life. I'm going to tell you a true story about my daughter and the parenting lessons from that. Parenting, Jenny. Before we do the rest of the show, we want to get into we have to do the disclaimer and the musical introduction. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way. I'll be right here when it ends. I'm Brian Barnett. I'm just a regular guy. I'm not a doctor. I have no legal license in any field of psychology. But I did live a large part of my life with borderline personality disorder unknowingly, and I really did rid myself of the disorder completely and permanently. Through that, I've become an expert on issues involving emotional health. I accept no responsibility whatsoever for your feelings, thoughts, behaviors, decisions, and actions, including your decision to watch or listen to this show at all. But I do hope you might benefit yourself from the insights I share. A man packed his tackle box. You know what a tackle box is? It's a box that fishermen carry, and they keep all their lures and bait and stuff inside of the extra fishing line, those sorts of things. So a man packed his tackle box with all sorts of that stuff. Live bait, artificial worms, highly praised lures. He had talked to all these other fishermen, and he said, what lures are working for the fish? And they said, go out and buy a Rapala, go out and buy a jointed lure, go out and buy this type of lure. Lures of this color are working really well. And so he went out and he spent a fortune on those things. He also spent a fortune on the best rod and reel that he could find. I was just at Walmart the other night looking at rods and reels, and I thought, it's been a while since I've bought a new fishing pole and a fishing reel. I was looking at the prices and comparing them. There were some that were, $100 just for the rod. That's not even for the reel. And I thought, well, what does that rod do that this $20 rod doesn't do? But anyway, that's all beside the point. This man went out and he spent a fortune buying the very best of all these things. Then he took his boat and he went fishing out in the middle of a large lake at noon on a hot day in August. And then when he didn't catch a single fish, he was disappointed. Now, those of you who don't fish might not know this, but a lot of fish hunt in the morning hours. That's why a lot of people will get up early to go fishing. They hunt in the morning hours and then they hunt in the evening hours. This is something I learned a long time ago. Get up early, go fishing, or right before sundown, go fishing. The rest of the day, many fish. Now, this ain't true for all fish. For example, if you're catfishing, you can fish all night long. But for a lot of fish, for example, the fish that I'm fishing for, like bluegill and largemouth bass, they hunt in the morning and in the evening, and then during the day, they're hiding from the heat of the sun and they behave fairly lethargic. And another thing about fish that's interesting is they like things. They like things in the water that they can get in and hide in. interesting things in the water. So like if a tree falls down in the water, they like to get in among those branches and stuff. Rocks, interesting rock formations in the water. They like to be able to swim in around those things and stuff like that. So they usually prefer to be around interesting logs, underwater plants, nutrient-rich shorelines, little coves, and other areas where there's these interesting things to hide in, rather than swimming out in the middle of the lake where none of those things are and they're vulnerable to other predators. So, back to the guy who spent all this money on lures, on his tackle box, on the most expensive rod and reel, and then he took his boat out and went fishing in the middle of a large lake at noon on a hot day in August. Out in the middle of the lake, where there's no interesting coves or trees or rock formations or anything like that. It's wide open water where fish don't want to be. They certainly don't want to be there in the middle of a hot August day. It's always occurred to me, this is a thought I've had for a large part of my life, that the most important part of fishing, if you're going to whittle it down to its most important elements, what are the most important elements of fishing? Well, it's this. The thing that matters above all others is being where the fish are, and not only that, but being there when the fish want to eat. Think about that. If you're not where the fish are, or even if you are, but you're there when they don't want to eat, what good is your really fancy tackle box going to do? Or the fancy lures, or anything like that? Without those two elements in place, being where the fish are and being there when they want to eat, without those two things in place, nothing else matters. It doesn't matter how much money you spend on a lure. It doesn't matter how much money you spend on that fishing rod. The when and the where, in this circumstance at least, matters much more than the what. The what being the lure you choose to use, or the rod you choose to use, or the boat you're in, or any of those things. So there's a lot of lessons in there. But I think that the one that I like the best is how easy it is sometimes to focus on the wrong things as mattering a whole lot when they matter very little. And in doing so, what happens? You overlook the things that matter most. And so in this work that we're doing here, in The Last Symptom, I would say that is the difference that you're probably going to get from somebody who's working with the professional community most of the time, not all the time, but in the professional community. They put a lot of importance on things that seem important, but really are not. And in doing so, they overlook things that they downgrade and downplay, things that are of great importance, but seem not to be, unless you have what? Insight. Unless you have insight. Because it takes insight to say, no matter how fancy my fishing pole is or this lure, the most important element to this whole formula is not in place. I'm in a place where there are no fish, and I'm there at a time of day they don't want to eat. So anyway, that is some insight given to us from the world of fishing that I thought I'd share with you folks, that you might be able to draw all sorts of benefits from in your lives. Let's do some announcements. TheLastSymptom.com is my website full of free and paid resources. I hope you'll go check it out. We have an online community. That's on the Locals platform. Of course, you can find links to that over at thelastsymptom.com. But you can also go there directly. And the way you do that is you go to thelastsymptom.locals.com, or you download the locals.com app from the App Store, and then you just search for The Last Symptom by Brian Barnett within. That group is important because we do live streams there every Monday where you can interact with me, you can ask me your questions, you can get direct live feedback from me. Also, I have a 2-week intensive course called the Last Symptom Fundamentals course. It's designed to just jumpstart your authentic recovery in a genuine and authentic way and get you oriented in the right direction right out of the gate. You can find information for that over at thelastsymptom.com, but I've also started making it available on our locals group. So more information there at locals. Soon there will be more information about that on the website over at thelastsymptom.com. I want to tell you a story. This is a true story about my daughter. And maybe it'll give us some insights about parenting, about the proper way to parent, the proper attitudes to have while parenting. My daughter, a couple of years ago, I noticed that she never, she had always been really like lovey-dovey for all of her life, never awkward around me. And then suddenly, it seemed to me that it was awkward for her to be hugged by me. Like when I would give her a hug, I would feel her body stiffen. And I noticed that she wasn't voluntarily telling me she loved me or giving me kisses or anything like that. Now, I remember when I went through that stage with my family, my unhealthy, disordered family. And I remember their reaction to that. Their reaction was, you've got to do this. It's the right thing for you to do. And kind of gave me the impression that it was wrong that I was feeling awkward about it at all. Well, what was happening? In my case, what was happening in my case was that I was going from being a child to a different stage of life. And these things were awkward. They were becoming awkward. My body was waking up to different uses for a kiss, for example, or different uses and purposes for a hug. And it was very awkward because I realized that the feelings that were happening inside of me were not meant for my family. They were meant for something else. At that stage of my life, I wasn't sure who they were meant for. I just knew that it didn't feel right when it involved my family. And so in my case, my family took great offense at that. I remember my dad in particular getting really offended, like taking personal offense at that and forcing me to give him hugs and kisses anyway. Well, so a couple of years ago, this started happening with my daughter. When I would give her a hug or a smooch on the cheek or whatever, I would feel her tense up. And so a couple of years ago, I was around a fire, and she was there, and I had taken her, and I was holding her in my arms next to the fire. And I had been noticing this about her for a while. And I thought, well, this is a nice, relaxed environment in which we can talk about this. So I said to her, I've noticed that you haven't been giving me a lot of hugs lately or kisses. And she was quiet. And I said, do you feel awkward doing that? And she said, yeah, I do. I said, well, I just wanted to tell you that that's completely normal. It's completely normal. I went through it too. I'm not upset. I'm not offended. And I don't want you to feel uncomfortable You'll figure it out, I said. So I just want you to know that that's a normal thing that people go through. You know, when you're a little child, things are one way, and then you go through different stages of life, and it seems to me like maybe that's what's going on. So there's nothing to feel bad about. You haven't done anything wrong. But I'm here to talk about it anytime you want to talk about it. Well, she opened up a little bit to me then. She says, it's awkward. I don't know why it is. I love you, she said, but I just feel strange doing those sorts of things now. And I said, well, again, it's completely normal. But if you ever want to talk about it, you know, I can tell you, I'm happy to tell you what I remember about that time in my life and what it was like for me and those sorts of things. And you will figure it out. It will all get figured out. Don't worry, you're not doing anything wrong. About 2 years passed. And do you know that this year, my daughter has gone back to voluntarily, out of the blue, coming up and hugging me and telling me she loves me and giving me kisses. Just today, we were watching Three Amigos, one of my old favorite comedies. I said, have you ever seen this movie? No, she's never seen it. And I said, well, you want to see it with me? She said, sure. So I played it. She was sitting in a chair. I was sitting in a chair. And about halfway through the movie, she come over and cuddled up with me in the chair. And she said, I love you, Daddy. And, of course, my heart shattered into 900,000 pieces. And I said, I love you, too. And, are you enjoying this movie? She said, yeah. I was talking to somebody the other day about this. At that point where I realized that my daughter was feeling awkward, being hugged by me or telling me that she loves me and those sorts of things, at that point, right at that point, well, it was make or break. It was make or break. So if you think about sports, it was like the game is either going to be won here or it's going to be lost here. Right here. If I had done the wrong thing, what I'm experiencing now with my daughter voluntarily feeling comfortable enough to hug me, kiss me, tell me she loves me, I would not be experiencing that. If I had not done the right thing in that moment, I would have ruined that forever. It was a make or break moment. The make or break moment was this. Am I going to make her feel like she's bad, like she's doing something wrong, and thereby cut off honest and open communication with her, thereby make her feel bad for being human, thereby try to shame her, take it personally, make it about me instead of about what is just the normal human experience that we all go through. If I had done the wrong thing in that moment, it would have been disastrous. I want to tell you that story so that you can think long and hard about the thinking and the attitudes that went into me doing the right thing. Another conversation I was having with somebody recently was that there's nothing shameful about being human. So there's somebody that I know who is in the process of perhaps going through these legal proceedings where somebody is going to try to humiliate her through these legal proceedings. And I told her, this person, that I imagine myself in situations like that, where like I'm exposed, for example, to the world, like maybe out in the middle of a sports arena or up on stage at a big fancy event, and they've just stripped me naked and they've put me in front of all these people. Would I be able to get through that with my dignity, with my sense of dignity intact? You got to remember, they can't take your dignity, but they can assault your sense of dignity. And how would I go about that? The way I go about it is I ask myself, is this thing human? Is it human? Because if it's human, there's nothing to be ashamed about. Maybe there's people that won't agree with what you've done, or the way you look, or the way you talk, or the way you are. But if you ask yourself, is it human? In other words, is this something that lots of other people feel like, look like, think, have done? Is it part of the normal human experience? Is this something lots of people experience and go through and do? Then there's nothing to be ashamed of. So maybe you're not particularly happy with your body, but do you have a body that nobody else has? So imagine being stripped naked in front of an audience. While not pleasant, and while definitely an assault on your privacy and assault on your dignity, would you be able to have that conversation with yourself and tell yourself, or ask yourself, is it human? Is it human for me to have love handles? Is it human for me to have a mole where that mole is? Is it human to be out of shape at my age? Is it human to be out of shape at all? You know, if you think about it, it's probably less human to have a six-pack and a perfectly tight body at any stage of life. A person has to work awfully hard for that. It doesn't come natural, that's for sure. Not in most cases. I mean, unless you're living off of antelope and walking 12 miles every day, naked in the jungle. It is probably not a natural human experience to have a 0.05 body fat index. So if you're in perfect athletic shape, that's probably less human than if you don't have all those things happening. But that's the conversation I have with myself. Is this human? So, for example, have I ever sent a text message that later I've thought, boy, that was a racy text message. I hope that never gets out. Yes, I have. So what if it did get out? That's the question I would ask myself. While being paraded in front of everybody, I'd say, is it human? In other words, is it anything out of the ordinary for a human to do that? The answer is no. Now, who knows what was happening in my life at that time when I sent that message? It's beside the point that anybody parading me in front of other people, they've done those same sorts of things. We're going to talk about that in a little bit later. There's a Bible verse, actually. It's taken from Romans 2:1. Romans 2:1 says, when you judge another, you actually condemn yourself. You actually condemn yourself anytime you judge another person. Why is that? Because you who judge practice the same things. In other words, whatever human thing you're trying to shame somebody else over, you've done those same human things. Now, maybe you get lost in the details and you think, well, I've never stolen anything, I've never cheated on my wife, so surely I can critically judge others who do those things. You're missing the point. The point is not the details in exactly what the way this human characteristic or this human flaw is manifesting. It's the human flaw. The human flaw is what you yourself are doing. So, for example, maybe you've never stolen a pack of gum from the grocery store. But have you never failed to turn in a lost item? You've been walking out into the grocery store parking lot. You look down, there's $1 there. Every time have you picked up that $1 and taken it into the store and given it to the cashier and said, I found this out in the parking lot, it belongs to somebody and it's not mine. No, you've not done that. Have you ever gone through the checkout line of a grocery store, got home, looked at the receipt, and saw that they failed to charge you for that pint of ice cream? And then, did you fail to take that ice cream back to the grocery store with the receipt and tell them, I owe you for this ice cream? No, you haven't. You've kept the ice cream that you did not pay for, and you went on and lived your life, didn't you? So it's the spirit of these things, the human condition, that flaw in the human condition that you are doing yourself. Maybe you've never cheated on your spouse. Have you never fantasized about somebody else? Have you ever not spent too much time looking at somebody else, desiring somebody else? Your dreams will give you away, won't they? Your dreams will give you away. Have you never had a dream about somebody else's wife? You think that comes from nowhere? Comes from that did not come from secret desire, did it? Have you never broken a promise or failed to live up to somebody's expectations? Have you never, ever, ever failed to live up to your own expectations? You see, you who judge, condemn yourself, what that means is that we are all practicing the same spirit of these things from day to day because of our flawed human condition. That's what it is. It's the human condition. So when you're looking out and you're judging somebody else, what are you doing? You're condemning yourself because you're willing to ignore it in your case, but you're not going to overlook it for somebody else, are you? You're going to be very critical about them. You're not going to give them the benefit of the doubt. So look for opportunities, particularly with your kids, where you can say, I have felt that way too. I know exactly how that experience was for me. And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to be open about it. You're not doing anything wrong. This is human. You're going through the human experience. Now, in my case, because I did the right thing, what happened? Because I did not shame my daughter, because I didn't take it personal, because it wasn't an assault against me that she didn't want to hug me or kiss me, what happened? Given time, she worked through it herself. No shame. Realized it was perfectly normal. She's not doing anything wrong. There's nothing to feel bad about. And eventually she worked through that herself. And what was waiting on the other end of that? What was waiting on the other end of that was still a deep affection and appreciation and love for her father. Her father who understands, who is patient, who helps her understand that she's normal. She's normal. She's a normal human being, and there's nothing wrong with that. And then what comes back? The hugs and the kisses and the I love yous.